Jenson Button on pole position, a very excited crowd at Albert Park in Melbourne, and a very expectant early morning audience back in the UK, I'm sure, as well. The Australian Grand Prix, all the ingredients are there for Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Well, what a show. Doesn't matter whether it's the first round of the championship or the third. No one does it quite like the Aussies. This is our 11th year at Albert Park, Melbourne, for the Australian Grand Prix, and I can't remember one which was more eagerly anticipated, because literally, as Martin said on the grid, any one of the top 5 drivers could win today's race. We've been talking so far this season about how close it is at the front in the first couple of Grand Prix, but every time on race day the Renaults seem to have turned up with a little bit of an advantage on race pace, but I'm not so sure that will be the case today. I have a feeling that McLaren has taken a step forward with updates on the chassis and on the engine side as well, and I think they're right there on the speed of Renault. Well, with a 12-point disadvantage to championship leader Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen really has to win today's Grand Prix to set himself up for a tilt at the Spaniards' world crown, and that is going to be a very intense scrap this afternoon. There you can see the aerial shot, the lake in the middle of this majestic Albert Park, a wonderful city, Melbourne, evolving very quickly. Lots of enormous skyscrapers going up in the downtown area, restaurants going out. It's a totally different place from even when we first came here 10 years ago, a much more international, outward-looking city, very much plugged in to the world community. Well, as Steve was saying, we've got Jenson Button on pole, and if Raikkonen and Alonso want to win this Grand Prix, and Fisichella as well, first of all, they have to get past Jenson. So far this season, Button is the best qualifier. Third in the first Grand Prix, second in Malaysia, and now on pole. But the race pace has been what's let him down. The question today, then, is whether he can push hard enough and whether his team can tactically race smart enough to keep him in front of the 2 Renaults and the 2 McLarens over the 58 laps of this Grand Prix, about an hour and a half of racing. Look at the margin Jenson had in qualifying yesterday. That's all down to having a nice clear lap, and as Martin said to him on the grid, possibly one of the best laps he's ever driven in a Formula One car. But just look at those danger men lurking behind him. He really is in a nest of vipers here. Behind them, Ralf Schumacher, Webber, Heidfeld, midfield runners pushing out the big names like Ferrari and even Rubens Barrichello, who finds himself well down the grid. David Coulthard made a small slip on his lap, otherwise he might well have made it into the top 10. Liuzzi, that's his best and Toro Rosso's best qualifying performance of the season so far. Rosberg finding out it's not all wine and roses in Formula One. He had a nightmare in qualifying yesterday. Not as much as Rubens Barrichello, though. You can see 16th on the grid. It simply isn't happening for him at the moment. He got held up by one of the Super Aguris on his lap. Felipe Massa crashed, that's why he's outside the top 10. Jacques Villeneuve, you see penalty next to his name. That's the only engine penalty going into this Grand Prix. We had a load of them in Malaysia in that intense heat, but here in Albert Park it's been cold and blustery, and only Villeneuve needed to change engines. Martin, there's no doubt though, this is probably the most difficult first corner in Formula One in terms of the number of incidents we have had over the last 10 years, cars going up on the grass, and it's very hard to negotiate your way through there. But how do you fancy Jenson's chances down to the first one?
Well, I've watched just about every other race, and it's wall-to-wall racing here at Melbourne, and it's pity it's not more like that around the Grand Prix world. It's great to see so much track action, and everything has leapt off the pole position, like it's very grippy down there. And generally there's quite a lot of grip on the grid because, as I said, there's been so much racing. But let's hope that works. But I don't know what it is with Renault, whether it's the first gear ratio, weight distribution, the torque characteristics of the engine, what it is, the traction control system, maybe a combination of all of the above. But we know they're just so mighty fast off the line. And maybe they even design this into a car now, because if you can leap a row on the grid every weekend, that's a huge advantage.
And he is pretty hot-headed from what we've seen so far. He tried to run his teammate off the track at the start of the last race.
Yep, that's a bit of libelous stuff going on there.
Yeah, Jock Clear might be hearing a word or two from Father Rosberg at the very least, possibly even Nico as well. Hot-headed, interesting. So just waiting for the parade lap to start. Michael Schumacher down in 10th place, but because he was actually qualified in 11th, he's been promoted to 10th by Villeneuve dropping back. It's meant that the cars outside the top 10 in qualifying are able to put whatever fuel strategy they want. The ones in front have to go qualifying with the the race fuel, as it were. So Michael Schumacher has the optimum race strategy. I think certainly a few of the cars in front of him probably feel they're in pretty good shape as well. What does that mean? Well, we're expecting the early runners to come in around about lap 16 or 17, and some of the cars running heavier. We expect Renault McLaren possibly coming in the early 20s, that kind of thing. Certainly tactics are going to be a vital part of the race today. This is a difficult racetrack in order to dodge traffic. You've got to be very strong through the traffic here, and we have got some particularly slow back markers in 2006. It's been a factor, certainly for Jenson Button. It cost him second place in the Malaysian Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, and that will be a big part of it. But it's absolutely vital to have clean in laps, good stops and clean out laps, and get those tactics right. With so little to choose between these front-running cars, it could make all the difference today. Yeah,
well, we've seen it in qualifying, haven't we? It's very close, and certainly you're right. Outs and ins and everything you do, every second you lose, as soon as those lights go out, every second counts, of course. And there are so many elements to that. It's not just driving around the racetrack, but a wide variety of tyre choices.
You can check you're happy with your brake balance.
That's the brake balance front to rear. They normally run something 52, 53% to the front. And what you tend to do, I don't know if they change it now, you tend to just wind a little bit off the front towards the back at the start to try to stop the wheels snatching down into the first corner. The brakes need a good 800 or 900 degrees centigrade before they're really working nicely. And they're going to have nothing like that as they head down to turn one and use them, having sat on the line, especially the front runners, sat on the line best part of 3/4 of a minute. So Jenson then being advised just to be happy with his brake balance, to get as much heat in as he can going around there. But yeah, I believe that Jenson and the two Renaults are on the softer Michelin, and the two McLarens are on the harder. I think if the softer tyres are going to grain, it'll be about 3 or 4 laps into the race, so let's watch out for that. I believe Ferrari have gone too hard on their tyres and are struggling in these ambient conditions. Just 20 degrees, ambient 29 on the track. Well, remember, we've had 45 or 50, haven't we, in the last 2 Grand Prix? And I think Ralf Schumacher in the Toyotas on a very soft Bridgestone tyre, which may have flattered him in qualifying, and he could...
Oh, someone spun it. It's Montoya. Sorry to cut into you, Martin, but just giving it a bit of the old gas. Montoya has spun it. I don't think I've ever seen that before, coming round to the grid. I've seen Fisichella go into the wrong grid slot. Juan Pablo Montoya is pointing sideways onto the grid, and I believe that if all the cars go past him, because he's on his parade lap, he'll have to start from the back of the grid, won't he?
Well, that's after they leave the grid, that rule, but he obviously switched the traction control off, but he can't reverse it up. I think if they all go past him, he'll then have to start at the back. You're right, he switched the traction control off, I suspect, and just dropped it. How embarrassing. I can't think of anything more embarrassing than that. And he's struggling. He's found reverse now, so what will he do? This is so unusual, James. I don't know what the protocol... Fisichella, that is Alonso.
That's Fisichella.
Sorry, Fizzy.
So Fisichella has stalled it on the grid. Alan Permain, race engineer, on the left. Flavio Briatore in the middle. Alonso there, you're looking at the right-hand side of the grid. They will go around. It's the new rule for last year. You can see that they go around and do another parade lap and form up. They will push Fisichella's car into the pit lane, and we'll see what race control tells Montoya they want him to do, whether they want him to go back to his original grid slot or start, as you can see where he is at the moment, right at the very back. But Fisichella will be pushed into the pit lane, and he will have to start from there.
I'm not even going to go to the rule book because I'm sure it's not covered. It's once they leave the grid, if the last car passes you the dummy grid, it's covered, but not when you spin like that. If I was him, I would now make my way through the pack on this lap. I'd be charging through the field now to you've got to make sure that you don't get sideswiped by somebody warming up his tyres. I'd be steaming up and park my car in the right position and worry about it later.
That's what happened.
Yeah, following his teammate around, trying to get plenty of temperature in those tyres. What he didn't do is bury the throttle there and get the thing in the... Ross found that very amusing. And you're right, Jack, I've never seen that before. I mean, we've crashed going to the grid before on an out lap, but Ted has news.
Yeah, small smiles in the Honda garage about that one, but I tell you what's important, Martin, is that removes Giancarlo Fisichella and Juan Pablo Montoya from Jenson Button and the chance of maybe a victory.
because he's stalled on the grid, so you've just got Alonso behind you.
Now that'll be music to his ears. I agree with them. I believe Montoya can, will and should take his grid position up, and the race distance of course is now reduced by 1 lap, and they'll save a bit of fuel on this, so they might be able to go a little bit further into the Grand Prix. But disaster for Renault, and now is a good time just to keep your head, keep calm, because everything's just that the tyres are just so cool now, the pressures are so low, and here comes Monty on his way through the pack, and he can just find his way to his grid slot.
So we heard Andrew Shovlin, the race engineer of Jenson Button, saying they don't believe Montoya will be allowed to go back to his original grid slot. McLaren have obviously instructed him different, because he is making his way through to his 5th place on the grid, which is now 4th, of course, because Fisichella is starting from the pit lane. There's Ron Dennis. He will have made this call. Nick Fry is saying, no, 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 not right. And basically, if you get passed by the last car on the parade lap, yes, it means off the line as you go on the parade lap, but surely it must mean at any time on the parade lap. Well, I wonder. That's the grey area here.
This used to be effectively, they used to go into a restart procedure, didn't they? They've changed it so that, and I've recovered my position before now after a stall when there's been another problem with other cars and been allowed to do it.
Well, Honda have traditionally not had a great time when you've had to do an aborted start and a restart. Historically, it's caught them out a little bit. Jenson Button now no longer has Fisichella there, but he's going to worry about Alonso. Watch out for Alonso. He's right behind Button. The Australian Grand Prix 2006 is going to get underway any moment now. And they're off. Watch out for Alonso. How's his start? How is Button's? What about Raikkonen? What's the story down to turn 1? There goes Alonso. He's not going to make the move. Raikkonen covers Montoya. Montoya pushes Raikkonen right to the inside. Raikkonen responds. Very firm tactics between the 2 McLaren drivers. And now Alonso's attacking. On the way down to turn 3. He goes to the outside line. And does he take it? No! Jenson is strong. He retaliates. The McLarens are having a heck of a ding-dong there, Martin.
Well, I think the 2 McLarens were fighting on the first lap of Malaysia and ended up getting hit from behind. They do go for it, and they got penalised there. Jenson covered his ground very well down to turn 3, had the inside line. Alonso, a bump there. That's Coulthard and the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher.
I think.
No, Trulli's got up there with a good start. Coulthard looks like he's got a problem too from there. Safety car
leads the Grand Prix. Alonso is 2nd. We've got car 6 off the racetrack. That's Felipe Massa. The safety car is standing by because Massa is off track. We haven't seen it, but look at the McLarens. Look at Montoya. Look at Raikkonen. What a tremendous scrap between these 2. Button leads the Grand Prix. Alonso is 2nd, and now the safety car is deployed. They're all slowing down now. They've been given the information. Jenson Button slows the pace down. Thank goodness for that, because I was running out of breath there.
Yeah, well, Massa's in the hedge somewhere then early in the lap. We haven't seen a picture of it yet. Must be, it's at turn 2, which is like, look at the understeer. Look at that. The understeer there when the tyres have cooled down, the pressure goes. There's the Toyota then of Trulli that had a coming together with Coulthard. Did that damage David Coulthard's car? And Massa doesn't, he's got 1 lap, not even a lap under his belt before he's ripped the other side off the Ferrari. Now, I think they worked all night, didn't they, more or less, to get him a new chassis after his mistake yesterday. And, well, he's obviously collected somebody in the first corner then.
So let me tell you what the order is for the restart, which we're going to get shortly. It is Jenson Button, your race leader. Fernando Alonso is going to be 2nd. Raikkonen is 3rd. 4th is Montoya. 5th is Ralf Schumacher. 6th Webber. 7th Heidfeld. And up to 8th, Michael Schumacher. The restart in a minute. Welcome back to Albert Park. We're just looking at a replay here. That's on board with Alonso, trying to get past Jenson Button into the first corner. And this is where the problem was. You can see, is it one of the Toro Rossos? Tangles up with Massa, and that's where Felipe Massa's Ferrari went planted into the wall. He is out of the Grand Prix. Also out of this Grand Prix, a couple of other cars. But let's just look at this incident.
It's Klein getting into Massa, who then runs into the back of Nico Rosberg in the Williams. Lots of debris. And that Ferrari having just been put back together after a big accident yesterday, in which in the press release Massa said there was no damage. And here's contact as Trulli ran into David Coulthard in turn 6. Coulthard seemed to be limping a bit shortly. He's now down in 15th place, and Trulli stalling out and did not get any further. And this is Fisichella at the back of the field, spinning after the safety car has been deployed. So he didn't get off the line. Now he's spun at low speed. There's so low grip out there now with the cold tyre temperatures, low tyre pressure, and generally not a huge. The safety car is in this lap, and Ted Kravitz is down at Williams. Yeah,
we saw Nico Rosberg come into the pits, -1 rear wing. Well, they had a look at it. They thought they might be able to replace it and send him out for, well, almost a test session, but it's too badly damaged. Williams have decided to retire Nico Rosberg. He's out of the car and on the pit wall.
Right, let's just tidy all this up then before the race gets underway. Rosberg is out of the Grand Prix, so is Felipe Massa, and so is Jarno Trulli. 3 retirements already then. David Coulthard is still running. Giancarlo Fisichella, we saw starting from the pit lane after stalling on the dummy grid. He is running as well. Despite that spin, we've had some real manners between the two McLaren drivers as we take another look at that incident off the start line. But what I'm interested in is that the running order behind Jenson Button, Juan Montoya has moved down from 4th place to 6th place while they've been following the safety car. We need to understand why that has happened and exactly what's going on. But at the moment anyway, Button, Alonso, Raikkonen, Ralf Schumacher, Webber, Montoya, the top 6 for the restart.
I think what happened there is, I believe, although he looks like he's trying to blame somebody else right now, Felipe Massa, I believe he hit the back of the Red Bull, wasn't it? Hit the back of the Red Bull that then went into Nico Rosberg. We'll see that again, hopefully. Button is out front there, and he really did defend well. He wanted that lead so badly, didn't he? And Alonso knew he had to do something about it. Alonso probably suspecting he's on heavier fuel load and wanted to clear the Honda of Button. What happened to Montoya, as you say, James? He was neck and neck. They passed under yellows, didn't they? One of them passed the other under yellows, but that doesn't mean to say he had to fall back 3 places.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly didn't appear to be racing against Ralf Schumacher and Mark Webber. Those are the 2 cars that have moved in front of him, Juan Montoya. So it was definitely Montoya and Raikkonen that were doing the racing. I think Kimi Raikkonen would be quite relieved that he can see him with Ralf Schumacher and Webber between himself and Montoya, because that was some heavy-duty stuff going on between those 2 teammates. No contact, but you see from the replays how close they came to contact. And Jenson Button is now picking up the pace. It's up to him to decide when to drop the hammer. He is going to drop the hammer right now and try and build as much of a lead, but Alonso's wise to it. This is a great restart from Alonso, and I think Jenson Button is going to be in trouble.
He went wide. Jenson tried to bury it into the last corner and went wide and had to get out of the throttle, and Alonso is going to punish him for that. Disaster then for Button. He had it all under control, decided to nail it at the last moment, hasn't got enough tyre temperature, ran wide, and now he's under pressure from Raikkonen too. Ralf Schumacher in the Toyota in 4th place. Button having to go defensive, but he's got the line covered. Webber's 5th, Montoya 6th, Heidfeld 7th, Michael Schumacher 8th, Liuzzi for Toro Rosso 9th, Speed 10th in the sister. So he's having to pull another gear shift down there. Such is the low level of grip.
On board with Kimi Raikkonen, we're in 3rd place in the Australian Grand Prix, and we know that at the moment the car in front is a bit of a wounded sparrow. But look at this though, Webber attacking Ralf Schumacher. This is the battle for 4th place. Ralf goes defensive, Webber goes round the outside of him, and what a beautiful move by Mark Webber on his home soil. The Aussie is up into 4th.
Yeah, that
Watch Montoya though.
Ralf Schumacher's struggling. He's on softer tyres, but he certainly doesn't look like he's got enough grip at the moment, and Montoya makes his way through too. But I have to say, that was a beautiful move from Mark Webber. Gets himself up into 4th place. Now Ralf already under pressure then from Heidfeld in the BMW, having to go defensive. He's not been on the racing line yet. He's always had to be covering his bases.
He wasn't going to let the BMW through, was he? He knew he probably couldn't resist Webber or Montoya, but when it comes to Heidfeld in another midfield car, I'm sorry, you simply aren't coming through, mate. At the moment then, it's Alonso leading this Grand Prix. at the end of lap 4. Jenson Button is in second place, having led at the start, but sadly he wasn't quick enough at the restart, lost the time. And that'll be an enormous disappointment to his mum Simone, watching at home with us here on ITV. I'm sure she has everything crossed for her boy. And it felt so good going into this Grand Prix, but he's under enormous pressure now from Raikkonen, who is taking so many chances here this afternoon. He desperately wants to win this Grand Prix, and he can see that Alonso is running away at the front. Alonso on the last lap 3 seconds quicker than Jenson Button.
He buried it into the last corner, just didn't give him any grip back, didn't give him any confidence. He had to get out of it, whereas Alonso, he's already several tenths up per sector on this lap too. He's going to be 3-4 seconds clear at the end of the lap, and Raikkonen knows he has to get after him. It looks as if Jenson is beginning to stabilise now.
That's good news for him. Alonso leading then from Button. Here you can see Juan Montoya having a go at Mark Webber. This is the battle for 4th place. They're just under 5 seconds behind the race leader. Montoya's through. Another very bold move by the Colombian.
Well, that's not normally put down as an overtaking place, but Webber had to go defensive on the previous corner, and well, Montoya just went for it on the way out, and that is Christian Klien. He's managed to meet the wall as well. They're really struggling to hang on to these Formula One cars today. They may be 200 horsepower down, but they still look pretty much a handful. What are we going to... Oh, he's lost it. Oh, nasty. Lost it badly under braking for, is that their turn 9 again? And is going to have a second impact there. That was a big accident for Christian Klien. Not absolutely sure where it was, but it could be that bump into turn 9. Yeah, it's the nasty bump into turn 9. Just touch the brake pedal, and before you know, you're just a passenger from the instant that you lose the back end of the car.
Giancarlo Fisichella here, started from the pit lane, having stalled on the grid, and he is working his way through. He is now in 16th place. He's passed 3 cars on this lap already. He's up behind Coulthard. This is a restart replay.
Yeah, you saw Jenson just getting loose in the middle of the apex of the final corner, and Alonso's got an easy run on him now. He came off the corner with more speed. He carried it all the way down the straight, and look how much grip he had when he launched it into turn 1. There's another high shot of that. He's really got all the track position he needs now, and straight away Jenson's having to be on the defensive against the fast-charging Raikkonen too. And he'll have to keep it on the right-hand side. Flavio seems moderately pleased with that.
Well, a bit further down the field, Rubens Barrichello, Jenson Button's teammate, is in 13th place, and he's struggling to get past the Super Aguri of Takuma Sato. Here's another look at the Klien incident. There's the bump. Car spears left into the wall. See the marshals ducking down there. Wheel flying up in the air.
It's the second impact you're always scared of, because the carbon fiber's done its work, but it actually wasn't a big shunt when he got to the second part of it, but the first one certainly was, and he'll have a sore neck in the morning, no doubt about that, even with a hands device on. That was an early big impact.
Here's Fisichella lining up Coulthard as we go into lap 6, lap 7. Coulthard currently in 14th place then, behind the Sato-Barrichello battle. Absolutely amazing, Takuma Sato in the Super Aguri, which is basically a 2002 Arrows chassis that's been brought up to 2006 specifications with a V8 Honda engine, the same as Jenson Button has in the back of it, and he's currently running in 12th place, would you believe it? 24 seconds behind the race leader, but in front of Barrichello, Coulthard, Fisichella, both of the Midlands. What an amazing start from Takuma Sato.
And he's faster than Barrichello at the moment as well. So Barrichello's still struggling for any kind. It's not raw pace, is it? It's any kind of pace for Rubens. He's down in 13. Coulthard and Fisichella behind him are quite a bit faster, as is actually amazingly Albers in the MF1-2 back there. But Alonso, 3.7 seconds clear. The first... Well, look, this is interesting. Jenson Button got another car in there. I wonder if that's for the Klien incident or whether we've had yet another accident. They may be trying to clear up the Klien car down there in the braking zone. And well, as I say, that's good news for Button. It's going to close their gap. But if he loses all the tyre temperature again, he'll be on the defensive one more time. Yep,
everyone just getting the message and slowing down. Alonso leading from Button, Raikkonen 3rd, Montoya 4th, Webber 5th, Ralf Schumacher 6th, Heidfeld 7th, 8th is Michael Schumacher. We're under a safety car for the second time in 8 laps here at Albert Park. Well, this has been a breathless start to this Grand Prix, hasn't it? No question about it. You can see the mess all over the track at turn 9. Look at the amount of tyre marks there are down there. It's, quite a few people have had problems down there, I think, this weekend. We've had an awful lot of support races, as Martin was alluding to earlier. V8 supercars, we've had Formula 3 races, and we've had all manner of other local races, some historic racing as well, with the great Sterling Moss blasting around in a variety of machinery, D-Type Jaguars, 250F Maseratis. Always enjoys this event, the Sterling. But now we're on a main event, and what an eventful one it is.
You need to put the centre switch to lift off and tell us the fuel figure like we did in testing.
This is the 8th lap of the Australian Grand Prix from Albert Park in Melbourne, and well, everybody's struggling to keep the cars on the roads here today. The temperatures are lower than we normally have. We are here a month later than usual. We're normally here in early March, which is just coming out of the Aussie summer and into their autumn. Now it's a month later, we're heading from autumn sort of almost into winter, and it's chilly here, colder than it was in the UK before I flew out here on Tuesday, and that's caught everybody by surprise. The tyre temperatures are very difficult to find, and so consequently we've had quite a few people sliding off the road here. Felipe Massa has had an accident at the start. We've seen Rosberg involved in that as well. Both of those cars are out of the Grand Prix. So too is Jarno Trulli. He collided with David Coulthard on the first lap, and now we've got that brought out a yellow flag and a safety car, and now we have our second safety car of the Grand Prix because of an accident involving Christian Klein, who crashed by himself, spearing left into the wall down at turn 9. Alonso's leading the Grand Prix from Button, who lost the lead to Alonso at the first restart, and now Button will come under pressure from Kimi Raikkonen at this restart as Montero pits.
Look at those tyres that came off. It's like they've been on a show car sitting in a museum somewhere. They looked like they hadn't done anything. So little grip. Now, the safety car is driven by a professional racing driver called Bernd Mailander, who's fast enough, and that is a very fast Mercedes-Benz with a hugely powerful engine. I said to him, how fast are you pushing, Bernd? And he said, flat out in the corners. It'll actually go faster than a DTM car down the straight. So the F1 cars don't need the big straight line speed, probably 150 miles an hour or something, but they need to go around the corners fast, and he is going as fast as he can, but it's nowhere near fast enough. But because the safety car's always got to be there, come rain or shine, you can't have a full-on racing car sitting there. It needs to be able to start up on the key and get out, doesn't it? So it's the best they can do. And but the drivers are saying, oh, this is such a dangerous moment for us when we've lost this tyre pressure. And quite rightly, in many respects, the FIA is saying, well, make your tyres and make your car work then for these conditions, which happen quite often, don't they?
It's typical Formula One, isn't it, to put everything absolutely on the edge to seek the performance. But as you say, sometimes in conditions like this, you need that safety valve, don't you? You need the tyres to be able to keep the temperature at moments like this when they're going round at, well, a minute off the pace they would be going at racing speeds. These laps are 2.5-minute laps instead of 1.5-minute laps. That's how much slower they are behind the safety car. So Jenson Button, will he be vulnerable to Raikkonen off the restart? We saw he couldn't resist Alonso first time round, and Raikkonen knows this has been a help for him because he's now very close to Alonso, who was getting away from him, and Raikkonen was struggling to get past Jenson Button. Once Jenson got back up to speed, Montoya though is right behind Raikkonen again for this restart, and they've been really going at it in the early stage of this Grand Prix. Now look at Alonso, takes a bit of curb there, Alonso. On the penultimate corner, but what about Raikkonen? Oh, he's lining up Jenson again. I think Jenson's going to have problems into turn 1 once again, Martin.
Yeah, Jenson's beginning to go, he's just wondering if he's got to go defensive. He has now, because Raikkonen's got a tremendous slipstream, and he's locked the brake. He's going to go wide, surely. Jenson, oh no, how did Raikkonen keep that on the road? But now Jenson can come back at him. He's got to just keep it to the right-hand side, bury it up the inside. Now, right now, exactly, perfect, well done. They're going to touch, they'll get away with it. Montoya thinks he's going to have a piece of the action. Raikkonen says, no way, you're not coming through there. Brave stuff from Jenson, didn't quite work out.
Well, he did exactly what you said he should do, Martin. He tried his very best. He's certainly been enormously courageous in these open-length laps as Jenson Button to resist the passes of others and to fight back. And now he's got the Colombian Juan Montoya, who is obviously in an enormously racy mood today. And he is going to try and get himself past Jenson Button as well. Meanwhile, Raikkonen scampers off after race leader Fernando Alonso. And how close were they to the wall?
how close? Well, certainly Jensen was looking at it. Surely Montoya, is he going to cut the inside into turn 11? You won't get through there, mate, because it's just too fast on the way in, and that's given Button a bit of breathing space. Can he now get the tyres stabilised and get after Raikkonen? Now he's still under pressure, isn't he? Why is that car so slow in these conditions? He's probably asking himself exactly the same question right now.
Well, it's been the problem. I've talked about this during the season, that they have problems coming out of a pit stop. Just, it's not to do with the warm-up of the tyres. If you talk to the Michelin tyre technicians, they say that's not really the problem. It must be something to do with the setup of the car that just doesn't perhaps work the tyre as hard, and so the grip just isn't there for the driver after these restarts and coming out of pit stops. Look, even Heidfeld is weaving on the straight to get himself some more tyre temperature. They're really struggling out there. Track temperature 26 degrees, the air temperature a rather chilly 18.
Yeah, but hang on, Alonso 4.3 seconds faster on that lap than Jensen Button on the same tyres effectively. So, and Button's still under pressure then from Montoya, and just having to, every time you go defensive you lose a second to the guy in front. And look, you can barely see them down the road, can you? They're gone already. Button's 5.3 seconds behind Alonso at the end of the previous lap.
And this is costing Montoya as well. He fancied his chances here this afternoon. He certainly spoiled those chances by having a spin on his way to his grid slot. Right as he came out of the final corner, he spun it, going to the grid, which is the most bizarre incident we've seen for many, many years. It's one of those what happened next clips from sports quizzes. But anyway, at the moment, you can see that Montoya is being dropped by Alonso and Raikkonen, who are trading fastest sector times at the front as Raikkonen closes down the World Championship leader. Let's have another look at how Raikkonen got past.
Yeah, here we go then. And he's picked up a beautiful slipstream, and I think Jensen should have gone obviously earlier to defend. I think he thought he'd got it under control. Somehow Raikkonen crept. Yeah, I think Jensen would have been surprised at just how quickly in that last phase of the straight Raikkonen managed to pass him and then still make it around the corner. What are we looking at here? This is Fisichella lining up David Coulthard. So Fisichella goes past Coulthard, and I think he takes Barrichello. That's a replay, and sometime later this lap he's going to have Barrichello as well. Montoya running P4, and looking at Jensen still struggling to slow the car down. There's a bit of extra tarmac out there, and this is why he was so close.
You can see Michael Schumacher battling with Liuzzi. Has Liuzzi got past Michael Schumacher? He has. Yep. Liuzzi has passed Michael Schumacher, the Toro Rosso, which was last year's Minardi team, taken over by the Red Bull Drinks Company, and I believe that must be Scott Speed who is behind him. So the two Toro Rossos are sandwiching the Ferrari of the 7 times world champion Michael Schumacher. What an extraordinary situation. And hey, they're up in 8th place. Liuzzi is in a points-paying position, and we're only 11 laps into this Grand Prix. Now remember, they're running a rev-restricted V10 engine, whereas everybody else, of course, is running V8s. It's a bit controversial. It's a loophole that was open for Minardi when they were a low-budget, back-of-the-grid team. It was never really intended for such a well-funded outfit as Toro Rosso, but the contract was in place, and they argued that they had to go with it. That's why they're where they are. But there's a lot more to come from this story today, a lot more to come from the Toro Rosso story. Must interrupt you, Martin, because Louise has got Nico Rosberg.
Nico, did you even see that one coming?
I did actually, yeah, because I could see him in the inside starting to come over. I was like, no, don't, please don't. And yeah, in the end, it just didn't work out. And unfortunately, it was in a good position for the next corner because I would have been in the inside. So yeah, it was really unlucky. Also considering that so many people went off. So I thought, okay, today could be a good day, get some good points.
Any blame to be apportioned, or was it just a racing incident?
Well, the blame is probably towards Massa and Clean. I don't know which one of the two, but something did wrong.
Bad luck for you anyway, thanks.
You cannot imagine how much fuss that's going to make, seeing a Toro Rosso pass the Ferrari down the straight. Toro Rosso sandbagged the first. They did such a good job of trying not to go fast. They actually got it all wrong in the first 2 races, and now we're seeing something much more what we were expecting of them, going and stealing points from the big runners. And I'd love to know what Michael Schumacher's thinking. Sandwich between the 2 Toro Rossos. In the works, Ferrari. Michael Schumacher's lapping in the 132s right now. Remember, I told you about the hard tyres at Ferrari. Michael Schumacher's lapping in the 132s. Alonso and Raikkonen 127. He's 5 seconds off the pace. And we saw a quick glimpse of Gerhard Berger there, who is a half-part owner of the Toro Rosso team.
Yeah, I mean, for sure there's going to be a fuss, but at the same time, if Schumacher is 5 seconds a lap off the pace, then Toro Rosso will say, well, that's why we're passing him, because he's slow, not because we're excessively quick. The Toro Rossos have certainly been pretty fast, but they're still only a couple of seconds off the pace. Meanwhile, at the front, Raikkonen, for some reason, has had a terrible lap and has dropped over 2 seconds to Fernando Alonso. He was closing on the World Championship leader, but on this last lap, Alonso's had a good lap, a 27.4. Raikkonen has done a 29.6. We didn't see why, but it's given a breathing space to Alonso, and Ted Kravitz has something for us.
Yeah, just down at Honda, we were all watching the Honda pit wall very closely in that restart, and they told him to go to the richest fuel mix, I believe. And remember, James, he does have an overtake button in this Honda, which allows him more revs if possible, but he just couldn't hang on to it for that few laps. But James and Martin, surely this cold tyres issue, they've got to fix that if Jensen's got a chance of challenging for a win.
Absolutely right, but we're looking now at the Honda B team car. Takuma Sato there, Rubens Barrichello still behind him, so is David Coulthard, and so is Albers in the Midland F1. We haven't seen a lot of them this year. The colour scheme, as you can see, misleadingly similar to the McLaren. The way to tell them apart is that the McLaren has a red rear wing, as opposed to the red flashes on the bodywork that the Midland has. But what about this performance from Takuma Sato in this upgraded 2002 Arrows? Absolutely stunning drive. We saw a flash of it in Malaysia, didn't we? He was well up the field there. Here he is, 13th. He's lapping in the 1:33s, which is 6 seconds off the pace of Alonso. But hey, he's up there, and he's keeping everybody behind him at the moment.
Rubens Chin will be on the floor of his cockpit, having to follow Sato in that car that has been almost cobbled together for the start of the season in a matter of weeks. And well, I think Sato ultimately is actually holding Barrichello and Coulthard up as they're stuck in the dirty air coming off the back of that car. But they're not exactly climbing all over him either, are they?
Today is definitely the day of the underdog as far as the back of the grid teams are concerned. Toro Rosso are running 8th and 9th. Speed, you can see there, battling with Michael Schumacher. That's the American Scott Speed, trying to take the world champion of 7 occasions, Michael Schumacher. And this is only Speed's 3rd Formula 1 Grand Prix. The 23-year-old from Manteca in California, first American in free event publicity. The battle between their man Speed and Michael Schumacher in Australia.
Yeah, looks he's pulled a 5-second gap in front of this pair. Such is the lack of pace of Michael Schumacher. They're about 2 steps too hard on the tyres, is my understanding. I don't quite know how they got that so wrong. Alonso just does a new fastest lap on a 1:27.4. Raikkonen's response as Michael Schumacher desperately tries to slow the car down. He's going to bump across the grass in turn 2, and that's why Speed was suddenly getting close to him. Dismal afternoon for Michael Schumacher. But Raikkonen's response was some 7/10 of a lap slower. He's not quick at this stage of the Grand Prix, and Button is beginning to catch him very slowly. Alonso looking pretty imperious out front.
Well, it started pretty well for Ferrari in the opening Grand Prix in Bahrain, trying to fight back after a disappointing 2005 season. Michael Schumacher qualifying on pole in Bahrain, eventually finishing in 2nd place behind world champion Fernando Alonso. Felipe Massa was strong that day as well, but then it started to go a bit pear-shaped for them in Malaysia, and it's gone very pear-shaped for them here in Australia. Ross Brawn, the Ferrari technical director, promising a significant upgrade to this car for the next Grand Prix at San Marino Grand Prix at Imola in 3 weeks' time. Aerodynamics, chassis suspension and engine upgrades, and boy do they need them.
Right, let's just draw a breath, because too much has been going on. Incredible start of this Grand Prix. Only 4 cars out of it, despite all the spinning and near misses and side-by-side wheels interlock stuff. Clean lost it under braking in turn 9. That's unusual these days to see a car just spearing off like that. They have systems to open the throttle to make sure that and that is Fisichella just passing Speed, isn't it? Passing Scott Speed for P10. But as they go into those areas, the throttle opens up with a special system to try to stop the rear wheels locking. The back end of the car goes light. You get a lot of weight transfer forward. You start to brake and downshift. It's quite easy to lock your rear wheels, but not to the extent it just spits you straight off the racetrack. So, although it has become very bumpy down there at night, so clean out. Truly came together with Coulthard in turn 6 on the first lap. Looks like his anti-stall didn't kick in. And then Rosberg, I think, a bit of a passenger in the first corner as Massa got into either a Red Bull or a Toro Rosso. Didn't see it, it was too far away.
Good. Okay, next is Michael. He's really slow, mate. He's really slow. You can take him easy.
Alan Permain, race engineer there to Giancarlo Fisichella. You can take him easy. I'm sure that'll be the headline in tomorrow's German newspapers when the inquest begins into the lack of speed of Ferrari here in Melbourne this weekend. This is definitely the next battle we're going to see on the track. At the front, Alonso's leading Raikkonen by 6.7 seconds. Raikkonen, another slowish lap there, another second a lap slower than Alonso that time round. Meanwhile, Montoya, who has a quick car here today, is still tucked up behind Jenson Button, and they are now 12 seconds behind the race leader as Alonso puts the hammer down even more, Martin. First man to break through into the 1:26s. He is pushing very hard here this afternoon. There you could see Button with Montoya behind him. Here is Mark Webber running well, the Aussie, in 5th place. He's got some space between himself and Ralf Schumacher, who doesn't appear at the moment to be any threat. And then Nick Heidfeld, once again, BMW Sauber punching well above their weight in 7th place and still holding a points position at the moment. Liuzzi in 8th. Across the line comes Michael Schumacher. Fisichella closing in on him on that last lap. He took 6/10 out of Michael Schumacher, so I think this may well be the lap on which he lines up Michael for the pass. Scott Speed is 11th, Villeneuve is 12th, 18 cars still running, and Sato is still 13th with Barrichello and Coulthard and Albers stuck up behind him. Michael a bit ragged there on the exit of the corner.
Don't know what's going on with Barrichello and Coulthard. Whether Coulthard's car's damaged from that contact with Trulli, we'll find out later on, no doubt. But Albers is keeping them honest. He's just 6/10 behind Coulthard, who's 7/10 behind Barrichello. Albers in the MF1 really hanging on very well to those much bigger budget teams. And Fisichella's quite quickly closed up the back of Michael Schumacher. Where is he going to choose to pass him?
Quite important for Fisichella that he gets past Michael Schumacher. Remember, Schumacher was knocked out in the second knockout qualifying stage, which means he will have fueled his car quite heavily, I think, for this Grand Prix. Fisichella probably is going to be making a stop sooner than him. Into the pits comes the McLaren then, the first of the big names to pit, Juan Pablo Montoya. Is this because he's due to pit or because he was tucked up behind Button and was losing time? I'm not sure. I had a feeling that Montoya was going to run longer than Button in this Grand Prix. I'm sure we'll find out afterwards. This looks pretty good from the McLaren team so far. Good old chunk of fuel going in now. That's a long middle stint then for Juan Montoya. He's going to try and use that to get past Jenson Button when he comes out of his stops, but he really needs some clear track, Montoya. Instead, he's tucked up behind the Michael Schumacher-Fisichella battle. That means Montoya's going to have to get past Michael Schumacher fairly soon.
Yeah, that's not going to work well. You're going to have Fisichella trying to pass Michael, and Montoya now needs the next few laps to be very fast. I'm surprised he pitted so early. They must have saved 3 laps of gas behind the safety car, mustn't they? And a slow first lap because of the restart. So not a lot of fuel on board for Juan Pablo Montoya. Then I don't think they would have chosen to pit him early for traffic necessarily, because that's putting back into even more traffic. Just wondering on Klean's car if I think it could well have been him involved that got pushed off by Massa in the first corner. Whether maybe it damaged his suspension, that's what speared him into the wall like that when something finally broke after the first corner contact.
Well, it certainly was as he hit the brakes hard for turn 9 that the car seemed to just spear left, and it did look pretty unnatural. So yes, you may well be right, some suspension damage. In comes Jenson Button then, the pole sitter for this Grand Prix. He lost his lead to Alonso at the first restart after the safety car. He then lost out to Raikkonen at the second restart. He was 3rd in this Grand Prix before making this pit stop. Mark Webber moves up to 3rd now. Ralf Schumacher is also in. Some wing changes for Jenson, a beautiful stop by the Honda guys. He's back out in business, so is Ralf Schumacher.
Jenson seemed to be very slow to the speed line, as if he slowed down for the wrong one there. Where does he feed back in front of Montoya, but only just. I think that's worked out okay. Will Montoya get a run at him as he heads down towards turn 3? And Fizzy in then too. They're all pitting about the same time. Alonso's just miles faster than anybody else out front. 9.4 second lead. Away he goes. Look, he did get him. Jenson then losing out to Montoya on the. We'll have to hopefully see a replay of that. But Montoya with momentum has obviously outbraked Jenson down into 3.
Yeah, well, Montoya is very hard to resist this afternoon. He really has been putting some manners on people, and that obviously was what he did to Jenson Button as well. They're coming up behind Michael Schumacher, so that's going to give Jenson possibly an opportunity. into the pit lane comes your race leader, who has been absolutely magnificent in this opening sequence. He got past Button on the restart. He then put the hammer down. Let's hear what he has to say.
Brake and revs, brake and revs.
Off he goes then, 9.5 seconds.
Line. Remember the white line. White line.
White line, don't cross that white line on your way out of the pits, otherwise you have to do a drive-through penalty. Back onto the racetrack comes Fernando Alonso. He was leading. Where's he fed back into the system? Just in front of Nick Heidfeld, who was running in 4th place. So Alonso down to 3rd only. He's not lost too much track position. Mark Webber is 2nd behind Kimi Raikkonen, and he's carrying some fuel this afternoon, Mark Webber. So keep an eye on him. I believe he's carrying probably the most fuel of any of the front runners. Williams being a little bit conservative yesterday in qualifying, and this might just play into his hands, although he was some way back behind Alonso after that first stint. Meanwhile, we're riding on board the Honda, coming down to turn 1. That's Barrichello, I believe, still tucked up behind Sato. This the battle for 13th place. We're being told that there's an incident involving car number 7, which is Ralf Schumacher, who has just made a pit stop, and that's generally what means he's been speeding in a pit lane, doesn't it?
Yep.
In comes race leader Kimi Raikkonen.
Another driver to slow right down and then have to get back on it again. So they're struggling to see that line today. Normally you can really attack that speed line and just move into it quite quickly right on the numbers. But Raikkonen was 9.4 seconds adrift before this round of pit stops commenced. So clearly he's going to be behind Alonso, but he feeds out nicely into some clear air as what looked like Liuzzi, indeed it was Liuzzi, coming down the track at him. But Raikkonen's going to have to defend himself down there, I'd imagine. Otherwise, that would be a disaster for him if Liuzzi sneaks up the inside. But he was only playing at it.
Well, he handled that pretty coolly, did Kimi Raikkonen. He's in front of the Michael Schumacher Montoya scrap, which is going on for 6th place. Confirmation then from the race stewards that there will be a drive-through penalty for Ralf Schumacher for speeding in the pit lane. We have an Australian leading the Australian Grand Prix then here on lap 22. Mark Webber in the Williams is the leader. Here's another look at the replay you were calling for of Button coming out and Montoya attacking him.
Yeah, Montoya went round the outside of him in 2. Jensen looking a touch cautious there, slightly offline, went in quite deep into 1. And Montoya's just gone right round the outside of him. Didn't even need to outbrake him down to 3. So Jensen totally lacking confidence in certain phases of the Grand Prix, unfortunately, with overall grip. But there's your race leader then.
The Aussie flag flying high here at Albert Park. Mark Webber leads the Grand Prix. How many more laps of fuel has he got in this Williams? It's not a challenge for the win here this afternoon for Webber, but good, consistent lapping, keeping the pace up. Nice strategy and good pit stops. Could well net him. He's in the hunt for a podium here this afternoon. Depending on what happens between Raikkonen, Montoya and Button, he's definitely in the hunt.
28.4s his lap times. Alonso behind him doing 27s. Heidfeld in 3rd place doing a 28.1 for BMW. You're right, it's been the midfield teams this weekend, James, that have really delivered, isn't it, in many respects, although Alonso does have this Grand Prix very much under control. Louise has found Christian Klein.
Christian, that was a big impact. Any idea what happened?
You know, there was a safety car period, and it was very difficult to warm up the Michelin tires. I struggled a lot with that, and I was on a very heavy fuel load. And I just went on the brakes, rear locked, and I went to the inside wall. There was nothing to do.
So we were speculating on the fact that obviously you were involved in an incident on the first lap. It wasn't any damage to your car sustained then?
I talked to the engineers over the radio and asked, you know, if they can see something at the rear, because I felt I got hit twice at the rear. But,
oh no, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Louise, but Mark Webber's in trouble. The Australian leading the Australian Grand Prix punches his steering wheel in frustration. He's got a problem on his car. The lead has evaporated and it's all over for Mark Webber here.
Looks to me like gearbox or drive shaft problem. Yeah, he's got a box full of neutrals or he's got a broken drive shaft. And completely, the engine's running fine, it seems. Just lost drive, disaster. Bad news for, he was on for some solid points today, wasn't he?
Driving very well here, Mark Webber, and he needs a good year this year just to establish himself firmly as a Formula One front runner. His engineer puts his head in his hands. There's nothing else to do or say as Mark slinks away from that car. Will he give it a kick on the way out? I don't think so. He's too much of a gentleman, but very, very frustrating for him. 2 Grand Prix in a row now that he's retired from. 6th in Bahrain, retired with hydraulics problems in Malaysia, and he's got something that's stopping that car from going in the gearbox or hydraulics department again here this afternoon. That'll be a relief to Barrichello as Sato peels off into the pit lane. Finally, Rubens Barrichello has not got a Honda B-Team car in front of him. Well, we've just seen Mark Webber retiring from the Grand Prix. Ted Kravitz has found his way into the Williams garage.
Well, I'm just gazing at their pit wall, and I've never seen engineers so irritated, absolutely hacked off they are. Do you know what? I reckon he might have run out of fuel. He was going very long, and there's just a possibility, either that or it could be the same hydraulics problem that put them out of the last race, but possibility he could have run out of fuel on that one.
Not sure about that one, Ted. I mean, we did hear his engine running as he pulled off the racetrack. If he'd run out of fuel, it would probably have cut out, but not sure. Ralf Schumacher has served his drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane on his first pit stop, and that has dropped him back behind the Toro Rosso of Scott Speed, who has yet to make a pit stop. Amongst the front runners then yet to make a pit stop, Nick Heidfeld is in 2nd place behind Fernando Alonso. Raikkonen is 3rd. Michael Schumacher has not stopped and has just set his fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far on a 1:27.5. So he's finding some speed now at the end of this stint. Montoya has stopped, he's 5th. Button has stopped too, he's dropped down from 6th place, today's pole sitter. Villeneuve is 7th and Ralf Schumacher is in 8th place. Off to this fella, Nick Heidfeld. He's shown strongly in every single Grand Prix so far this year, and he's doing it again here in Albert Park. What a year he is having in this BMW Sauber. I noticed going through the data from the Malaysian Grand Prix, the lap times, that generally speaking, this team has improved by about 1.7 seconds a lap since they got taken over by BMW compared to plain old Sauber last year. And he is doing a super job. They're about a second a lap off the pace of the front runners, but the consistency of Heidfeld is what's keeping him up there. Lap 26 of this 57-lap Australian Grand Prix. It's a lap shorter than normal because we had an aborted start due to Fisichella stalling on the grid. Michael Schumacher there, you can see, has made his pit stop. That's Jacques Villeneuve coming down the pit straight. He'll rejoin in front of him in 6th place then, Michael Schumacher, who had just set his fastest time of the race so far before he made his stop. Villeneuve, though, is obviously a much lighter car, and his tyres are fully up to temperature. He'll want to try and capitalise on that. Villeneuve on the Michelin tyre, Michael Schumacher on a fresh set of Bridgestones, and well, they appear to be too hard here this weekend, the Bridgestone tyres, and that's hurting him. Ralf Schumacher has served a drive-through penalty, which is what's dropped him back from 5th place in the opening stages, back now to 8th place behind Michael Schumacher and Villeneuve.
Villeneuve hasn't pitted yet. He's one of the few runners, the Barrichello Coulthard. But something I don't understand, James, Michael Schumacher, just before he came in, was lapping 4 to 5 seconds a lap faster than he was when he was mixing it with the Toro Rossos. I cannot explain that. Same set of tyres, running down the fuel a little bit, and all of a sudden started doing 27s instead of 32s.
It is very strange indeed. I'm sure there'll be some explanation of it later. The fastest lap we've had so far is a 1:26.9 from Fernando Alonso, who's been comfortably running in the 27s and now in the low 1:28. So you can see Michael Schumacher's fastest lap of the race so far is competitive, but it's really only been 1 or 2 of them as opposed to a whole stint worth of them. Very strange. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
I'm afraid to say it gets worse for Honda, James. Nick Heidfeld in the BMW has just pitted, and he's rejoined ahead of Jenson Button. So that's one more for Jenson to pass, but worse, Jenson can't do his true pace. Now he's Well, he's going to catch Heidfeld rather quickly.
You're absolutely right, Ted. Yep, cameras have not picked it up, but Heidfeld has come back out in 4th place ahead of Jenson Button. There it is, you can see on your graphic. And Button is just under 2 seconds behind him. So the pace for Button, once again, doesn't seem to be there on race day like it is in qualifying. I mentioned that he's the most consistent high-level qualifier in the field, even more than the Renaults and the McLarens. He's averaging 2nd on the grid. Mark Webber, the Australian, led the Australian Grand Prix. He's out of it, but he's with Louise.
Mark, 1 minute you're leading, the next you're out of the race. It doesn't get much worse than that, does it?
Yeah, and of course we had some stops to do, but anyway, it showed how heavy we were in qualifying, and guys have done a good job with the pace of the car, but we've got to get the checkered flag. So I feel for all the guys at the team, of course myself as well, because we did all the hard work, and we're in good shape.
What was the response from the fans as you were walking back in?
I think they knew how I felt, so they were very respectful, and yeah, they hurt as well.
Thanks, Mark.
Right, Michael Schumacher's hauling himself, not for the first time we've said this, hauling himself back into the solid points-paying positions today. He's very, very quick out of the box. He just dropped Villeneuve and Ralf Schumacher as if they're standing still. He's halfway to, look, he's all the way down into turn 1 on the pit straight there. He's just dropped this lot for dead. Done a 1 minute 27.1. He's the fastest driver out there by a margin now. What is that all about?
Well, it's very, very strange. It may well have something to do with the tyres. Clearly, this set of tyres is working a lot better for him than the first set did, although they eventually came good. But it's just very difficult to explain. 4 seconds a lap is an enormous difference. And let's say he's just taken on a full fuel load, and that's his fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far. So normally the weight of the fuel slows you down.
I can only think it's because some rubber's going down now. Formula 1 rubber's getting down onto the track. They're lifting the hard rubber of the support races, getting some softer rubber down. And what happens if your tyres are 20 degrees out of their operating temperature? You're nowhere. And all of a sudden, you get in the zone, and then because you've got grip, you generate a lot more temperature, and then you get this massive ramp up of performance. And that's the only thing I can think of, is suddenly the track has come to Michael Schumacher and his particular tyre compound right at the moment.
This is very interesting, this graphic here. Look, Liuzzi, red line is going just above 16,000 RPM. That's because he's got a rev-limited V10 engine. I mentioned before, they're the only team, Toro Rosso, that are going this way. It's a loophole in the regulations that was put in there for Minardi, and Toro Rosso have carried on with it. The V8 engines of everybody else, well, typically the Cosworth in qualifying will rev to 20,000. The Mercedes-Benz is revving to about 19,006. So you can see the effect of the rev limit. The idea of it, obviously, is to make the power equivalent to the V8s at around about 720, 740 horsepower. But the difference, everybody says, is that the rev-limited V10 has much better torque, which means it has more acceleration out of the slow corners. And that's an important factor here at this Albert Park circuit, which has a lot of low-speed corners where you need good grip and good traction coming out of them. And that's why Toro Rosso are so competitive here this afternoon, although I have to say that Liuzzi has fallen back a little bit now in this second stint of the Grand Prix. He's currently running in 9th place, but Villeneuve has still to stop, so that's going to be 8th again for Liuzzi.
Well, Button's down to 5th. He's now going to have Michael Schumacher chasing him anytime soon. Alonso leads, moves into lap 30. He's done a 1:27.4. He's 15 seconds clear. McLaren's again a bit disappointing on ultimate race pace. They tell a good story after the qualifying. They're always so confident, aren't they, about their fuel loads for the race. But somehow or other, it doesn't translate. 17 seconds adrift now. Best part of 2 seconds a lap slower is Raikkonen, and his teammates beginning to catch him. Look at Heidfeld hanging on. Now, of course, it's yeah, and Button 1:30.5. Button's lost 3 seconds to Michael Schumacher. He's got a problem in there, surely.
I tell you what, the lap times today are all over the charts. The only people who are being completely consistent in their lap times are Fernando Alonso and Nick Heidfeld. 2 completely different packages, but both drivers able to get the maximum out of them on every single lap. For some reason, Raikkonen dropping 2 seconds on that lap to Alonso. He is now 17 seconds behind him. Montoya is catching him, having taken 6/10 out of him on that last lap. Heidfeld is 4th, Button 5th. Michael Schumacher, half a minute behind the race leader in 6th place, and we're not even yet at the halfway stage. We are just approaching the halfway stage of this Grand Prix. So Michael's going to be a minute behind at the end at this rate. There'll be a big inquiry about that back in Maranello. Villeneuve, yet to pit, is doing a good job in 7th place, having started in 19th on the grid, having taken the engine penalty. And then Ralf Schumacher is 8th, Liuzzi is 9th. Fisichella, who started this Grand Prix from the pit lane, having stalled from the front row of the grid at the start, is up into 10th place.
Michael's not going to be a minute behind. He's hauling them back in. He's gone wide there. He's got away with it, though. Turn 14, he got away with it. He's pushing hard, but he's just hauling himself back into the contention for sort of 3rd, 4th and 5th. In my view, he's just 3 seconds behind Button and catching him at a huge margin. Despite going off the road, he still came back at... he's locked up going into turn 1. He'll scamper across the grass, and that won't do the tyres a lot of good, Michael. He's getting really ragged now, isn't he? So, but he's still gained 9/10 despite all those dramas.
Yeah, he did. It's true. It was dropped on that last lap a second to Fernando Alonso, but there were some reasons for that, as you say, going off the track. So maybe Schumacher is trying to haul himself back into this, and certainly you can see Button in front of him now. He was 2 seconds behind the pole sitter Jenson Button, now dropped down to 5th place. Rubens Barrichello has pitted from 12th place. That takes the Midland of Montero up to 12th place. And there you can see Schumacher pushing very, very hard indeed. What will he make of these last 2 Grand Prix? In Malaysia, overtaken by teammate Felipe Massa, who started at the back of the grid. Here in Australia, the pace nowhere in the opening stint, and a bit of gardening there as well in his middle stint. There's a lot to think about for Jean Todt there, the boss of Ferrari, and for Michael as well, as he considers his future, considers whether to continue Formula 1 racing or to go off and enjoy a wealthy and quiet retirement with his family.
I still think Michael will appear back on the scene in a very high-level way in Formula 1 whenever he does decide to retire. Now we saw him go off in turn 1. He lost a couple of tenths to Button that time, so his charge is temporarily halted. Alonso leads by 21 seconds, pulling out 2 seconds a lap now for Raikkonen. Montoya 3rd and still catching his teammate. Raikkonen really struggling for pace. Heidfeld just hanging on in the BMW, and Button with poor speed in the 1:29.2. too. Michael Schumacher, Villeneuve, Ralf Schumacher. Look at that. That tells you over 3 laps, Montoya has taken 3.6 seconds out of Kimi Raikkonen.
It's pretty self-explanatory, that graphic, isn't it? And it tells a sorry story for Raikkonen, who needs a result here this weekend to get himself on terms with Alonso. 12 points behind him at the moment in the World Championship. Alonso looks very comfortably on for his 2nd Grand Prix victory in 3 races. And he was 2nd in the other race, of course, in Malaysia. So it's been a great start to the year again for Alonso. And, well, Raikkonen's seen this movie before and he knows all about it. He doesn't want to live through it again as he did last year. And that's why this Grand Prix is so important to him. Alonso goes through then. 25 laps to go here at Albert Park. Raikkonen has dropped another 1.5 seconds to Alonso, and Montoya has taken another 6/10 out of him on that lap. The gap is now just 3 seconds between the 2 McLaren teammates. And they were pretty firm with each other off the start as well, weren't they? The opening lap, they were really, really battling each other.
Yeah, we didn't see it in Malaysia, but I'm told that one of the reasons Klein was able to run into the back of Raikkonen is because they were just swapping positions, the 2 McLarens, through each corner, going hell for leather at each other, which put them on their back foot a little bit. But although they never quite caught that on camera, we only saw the end result as Klein ran into the back of Kimi Raikkonen and broke his suspension. But he certainly now, let's look at the first sector. Montoya ½ second faster in the first sector. The end of the second sector coming up. Yeah.
Giancarlo, you're still 2 seconds a lap slower than Fernando. This cannot be possible. You've got the same fuel load. I know you've got some understeer, but you cannot be 2 seconds slower. Come on.
That's going to hurt to hear that over the radio, but what he's saying is you've got the same tyres, same car, mate. but your teammate's doing 27s, you're doing 29s, get your finger out.
It's not just over the radio, Martin, it's to the ears of millions and millions of viewers around the world as well, and radio listeners too. Montoya very ragged on the exit of the final corner, and that's, well, that was very public for Giancarlo Fisichella, wasn't it, that radio message? Everybody heard that.
But it's warranted.
Oh, is that Michael Schumacher? It is. Schumacher pushing enormously hard, trying to catch Jenson Button. He has dropped it on the final corner and hit the wall. Debris all over the track. Safety car has to be deployed, and it is. Ross Brawn, head in hands once again. The second race in a row. Michael Schumacher is going to, well, not the second race he's going to retire, but he's going to retire here this weekend. And everybody's going to dive into the pits because we are not quite in the pit stop window, but I guess they're going to turn it into a pit stop window. 24 laps to go. It's going to be a long final stint for everyone then as Schumacher climbs through the fence. That was a big incident for Michael.
Well, he'd certainly be getting plenty ragged enough, hadn't he? And, well, that's the third Ferrari Formula One car smashed to pieces this weekend. Massa's had a go at 2 of them. And you have to be careful when you're coming in the pit, because there's a certain moment where the pit lane is not available when the safety car comes into view until he passes the end of the... and Michael's straight out of there. Another moment where he keeps the crash helmet on.
What was going through his mind there? Because he clearly thought that garage was his and he marched straight into the Toyota garage. It's got plenty of red on it, but it's certainly not Ferrari. He's obviously, mentally, he's obviously well and truly wound up here. Everybody dives in then. Look at them. Alonso, Raikkonen, the 2 front runners. Montoya has pitted as well. Montoya's queuing up behind Raikkonen. Hopefully they can turn Raikkonen around quickly. A nose change for Raikkonen. That's interesting. I wonder if that's why he was slow.
Yeah, well, you can't afford...
It's taking time, though. Look, Martin, it's taking time. And Montoya is queued up behind him. This is costing McLaren richly. Look at this.
Ted's down there.
It's a disaster for McLaren. It was the right-hand end plate of Kimi Raikkonen that was broken. That explains why he was so slow. They had to change it. It normally takes about 18 seconds. Now there's a delay on the right front tyre of Juan Pablo Montoya. Gets away, but oh, that's going to cost McLaren time.
It's great news for Jenson Button, though. Very good news indeed. It probably puts him back into contention here. It's also wonderful news for Nick Heidfeld, who's been running towards the front. And that's going to change things quite a lot here. Let's take a look at what happened, Martin, to Schumacher.
He understeered wide, and then there's a nasty bump there that just put him straight into the wall. We saw Coulthard in a McLaren do a similar thing. The bump just launches the car, and there ain't a lot of grip in the air. It's just a bit of understeer picked up mid-corner. Here we go. And there, it just kicks the car up in the air. And you just can't believe the energy going on. It all looks so calm and under control, doesn't it? It's probably about 120 miles an hour on the exit there. And, well, the tethers did a great job keeping all the wheels as the McLarens, a replay of them queuing up. Alonso is on lap 35 and comfortably leading.
So a rather damaged Ferrari, the second this afternoon. Quite a lot of repairs to go on Ferrari. Massa hit the wall yesterday in qualifying. He hit the wall again at the start of this Grand Prix, and now his teammates hit the wall too. So it's a full house for Ferrari. There are the race leaders just forming up behind the safety car. Once again, we have this situation where their tyre temperatures will be low, and of course they've all just changed their tyres as well, so quite critical really. We have 22 laps of this Australian Grand Prix still to run. We are under a safety car situation for the third time here this afternoon. Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, you can see on the left of your screens, hit the wall. The 7-time world champion pushing very hard to try and catch Jenson Button, and he pushed a little too hard on the exit of the final corner, smashed into the wall. Teammate Felipe Massa hit the wall at the beginning of the race, having hit it yesterday in qualifying. So 3 big smashes for Ferrari here this weekend. They go away with no points. We've already lost a few runners as well. Rosberg retired with no rear wing. Trulli had an incident with Coulthard on the opening lap. An extremely eventful opening lap, it has to be said, for pretty much everybody in this race. Christian Klein crashed a few laps later. That brought out the second safety car of the afternoon. Then Mark Webber led the Grand Prix briefly when Alonso made his first pit stop. But whilst leading the Grand Prix, the Australian retired with no drive. Michael Schumacher becomes the latest retirement. We have 16 cars still running. That, you can see, is the top 8. Look at Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber BMW, who's been driving beautifully this afternoon. And as a result of Kimi Räikkönen making a nose change, which went wrong, they had a problem getting the new nose on, and he was heavily delayed. It also delayed teammate Montoya, who was queued up behind him as everybody pitted under the safety car, and that's offered an opportunity to Jenson Button, who had lost a lot of ground in the early part of the Grand Prix, to gain it back again. He is now up into 4th place behind Räikkönen, but ahead of Ralf Schumacher and Juan Montoya. And this is the incident of Michael Schumacher again, just catching some air as he oversteered wide out of the final corner and slamming into the wall. Fisichella, who started this Grand Prix from the pit lane, is 7th, and Jacques Villeneuve in the other Sauber BMW is in the points in 8th.
Michael understeering in the dirty air there of the Honda of Jenson Button, and it looks like he didn't really recognise it early enough, but I know how easy it is to do there. It's quite a tight corner. Your vision, actually, your vision is quite impaired. By the time you realise you're running a little bit wide as that exit curb comes into view, often it's just too late to do anything about it. You haven't got enough grip to do anything about it. All of those pieces flying up, they weren't all pieces of Ferrari. It's because so many other cars have crashed there over the weekend.
Okay, Jenson, so if these don't grain, your pace was looking very good in the first stint, and there's everything to play for still.
So that suggests then that in that middle stint, Jenson had graining tyres, a little balls of rubber on the surface of the tyre, and that's why he was, well, we say so slow, but he was really struggling for pace at that stage. So that explains then what happened to Button. He'll be pleased that Montoya is behind him, and Ralf Schumacher too. Räikkönen, though, did manage to get out just ahead of Button. So Alonso from Heidfeld in the BMW. It's a view from the safety car. Listen to the good old V8 motor steaming away now. And Heidfeld, Räikkönen 3rd, then Button 4th. Ralf Schumacher hanging on there for Toyota, doing a good job this weekend. 5th, Montoya, then 6th, having had to queue up and wait for his teammate to get a new nose.
Safety car coming in at the end of this lap. Ralf Schumacher's performance is particularly creditable if you consider that there he is, you can see waving his tyres, the yellow helmet Toyota. He had to do a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane when he made his first pit stop this afternoon. So despite that, Ralf Schumacher is up in 5th place. Jeff Willis there on the right, technical director of the Honda team, talking to Nick Fry. There is the genius man, Pat Simmons. Rumours of McLaren trying to tap him up because he is just so good and so clever at strategy and tactics and just engineering the car into the racetracks. He's so much a big part, not the only part by any means, but a big part of the reason why Renault are in the form that they're in at the moment, along with Dino Toso, the chief aerodynamicist, who's done a wonderful job on this car, Bob Bell, technical director, Tim Densham as well, who used to work with me and Martin at Brabham back in the early 90s, who's designed these cars. They're all working beautifully together like an orchestra that is fully in tune.
Alonso's gone. He's got 2 MF1s behind him anyway. He's got 2 back marks between him and his main competitors. He's got himself a 6-second lead or something, because they cannot overtake until they cross this line they're about to approach. Good discipline there, and now he can catapult past. And look at that, Räikkönen trying to make the best of that situation. Heidfeld had it covered though.
But Räikkönen is through past the Midland. I think that Midland was trying to get out of the way when he saw Alonso going. He tried to get out of the way knowing he had quick cars behind him, perhaps forgetting he wasn't allowed to no one was allowed to overtake before the line. It cost everybody enormously. That's Ralf Schumacher.
Oh,
Montoya got a bump there from someone. Fisichella is the man behind him. Did he bump Montoya? And is it going to cost either of them bodywork and places?
Yeah, Montoya losing out very badly on the restart because of the back markers. You cannot pass until that'll be Sato then. He can't do anything. There's nowhere to go. Look, there's nowhere to go. It's like a traffic jam down there. Now he can steam up the inside. Does Ralph know he's there? He got away with that one just about. And Barrichello also trying to make his way. Sorry.
I think that's Button in the middle of that. It is. Jenson Button's in the middle of it all as well. There's a problem here for one of the Hondas. It's Jenson Button. Has he got some sort of difficulty? He certainly was in the middle of that crush, as was Fisichella. That was bananas. How did they avoid hitting each other? Certainly someone bumped Montoya. We've got safety car again, have we?
Yeah,
no.
Liuzzi in the hedge.
Is in the hedge, yeah.
I think that Button was coasting. Safety car is definitely deployed. Car 20 stopped, which is Liuzzi. Well, Button probably lifted off for the safety car boards, but he looked like he was out of position, didn't he, Jenson Button there? Gerhard Berger owns half the team with Red Bull. Yeah, Button's not showing any longer in Montoya's fourth. Button's sixth at the moment. Button has had a problem somewhere and was out of position.
This is where the incident looks, well, certainly an incident has happened. Turn 2 is where the car of Tonio Liuzzi has come to a stop, and that
it's more like halfway down to 3, isn't it? It's a long way out of the corner where he's gone off the road. And there then is Button. What's he doing all the way back there? We haven't seen what the problem was. So Alonso leads from Raikkonen now. Ralf Schumacher third, Heidfeld fourth, Montoya fifth, Button showing in sixth, followed by Fisichella, Villeneuve, Speed and Barrichello in 10th.
Barrichello and Coulthard have both come into the pits. I don't know if it's for running repairs after perhaps some impacts in that restart, but well, this is the 4th safety car we've had this afternoon. There's still 19 laps to go here. Safety car going around. We'll have at least another lap, I would have thought, while they clear the mess of Tonio Liuzzi's car away. He'd been running quite strongly, had Tonio Liuzzi. He was in the points in the early part of the Grand Prix, so a strong showing from him. But Ralf Schumacher, in all that jostling for position off the restart, up into 3rd place.
Needed a calm head through there. It'd be very easy to steam in and just collect a slower car. Impressed that the drivers remembered they couldn't overtake to the start-finish line because it's such a long way down the pit straight, isn't it?
Mike Gascoigne there. Welcome back to Albert Park, Melbourne. There's Liuzzi crashing in the background. That's the reason why we are under the safety car for the 4th time here this afternoon in this extraordinarily eventful Australian Grand Prix. A comprehensively smashed up Toro Rosso there hitting the wall. David Coulthard looked to be involved in that. He's just slowed down. And it was a real bumper grind for everybody else. You can see Montoya here. Ralf Schumacher got past him. That's the Super Aguri on the left of Takuma Sato. We're tucked up behind Villeneuve, I believe it was, in the BMW. Heidfeld, sorry. And it's just been absolutely extraordinary, this jostling for position. Here's Jenson Button, who was the pace setter yesterday in qualifying. Started on pole position, but he's had a bit of a torrid afternoon, really, and didn't really have the pace in the early stages. He got passed by Alonso after the first safety car restart, and then he was passed by Raikkonen after the second safety car restart. And well, it's been backward progression really for Jenson Button since then, but he's been given a lifeline by a McLaren pit stop under the 3rd safety car period, which caused Raikkonen and Montoya to get delayed as a slow nose change on Raikkonen's car, with Montoya queuing behind him, let Button back into it. Has he got the pace though in this final stint?
He's been too cautious on that last restart.
The brake pedal is so sticky. I mean, it's not the time to talk.
struggling with the brake pedal. But why do they queue in the pit lane? Well, if you carry on, you get picked up by the safety car, then you make your pit stop, and you end up at the back of the tail of the crocodile that's behind the safety car. So it's much better to queue. And here's Button on the restart, and he's already, I think, lost one place to the BMW, and now he loses another place, and it was Button then that collected Montoya. He just fell backwards. He struggled so much with the cold tyres. He lost another place later on in the lap. That's why Button has fallen back down to 6th place.
Well, we saw Mike Gascoigne of the Toyota team go down to Midland and ask them to get their men out of the way as quickly as possible. The problem is the Midland guys aren't fast enough here at the pickup. And you can see Ralf Schumacher is in the queue here. There is Raikkonen. He's held up behind the Midland. He can't pass him until the start-finish line. And look at the lead that Alonso's got already. Now Raikkonen can pass him finally. And I imagine Ralf Schumacher will be coming through pretty fast as well. There is the Toyota Ralf Schumacher. He'll want this Midland to get out of his way. He's passed one of them already. Montoya monsters his way past Albers as well. And for the second restart in succession, those Midlands have played a part in the story. Alonso loves it because he's running away. Ralf Schumacher nerfs the Midland out of the way. Montoya pushes his way through as well. So Alonso leads, Raikkonen second, Ralf Schumacher third, Montoya fourth, Heidfeld fifth, and Button down in 6th place at this restart with 17 to go here.
Alonso always seems to be just in the right place somehow, doesn't he? Alonso was 3.1 seconds in front of Raikkonen on the restart. What's it going to be now? It's now 5.1. But at least now they're in clear air. And Ralf Schumacher, Montoya, Heidfeld slipped back horribly in these restarts, down to 5th, 13 seconds adrift, followed by Button and Fisichella. Button under pressure from his old teammate.
Well, it's been a day full of enormous incident. We've had 4 safety cars, as I mentioned. It's probably time to take a bit of an overview here, but certainly without doubt the stories are that everything seems to have fallen into place nicely for Fernando Alonso as one of the Midlands pulls off the racetrack. That's Montero, so he won't finish this Grand Prix. Jenson Button's had his problems keeping the pace up, particularly off the restarts. That's been one of the big stories here this afternoon. The McLaren's made 1 or 2 little mistakes. Montoya spun coming to the line. Very bizarre incident, that one. They had a problem changing the nose on Raikkonen's car and queuing Montoya behind him. So that's what's pushed McLaren really out of contention, even though Raikkonen is only 5 seconds behind Alonso. But the other great story and theme of this weekend has been the performance of Toyota and BMW, particularly with Heidfeld and Ralf Schumacher, who punched well above their weight yesterday in qualifying and throughout this Grand Prix as well. Ralf Schumacher currently 3rd, Heidfeld just dropping behind Montoya into 5th place, but both of those teams will be more than happy with their performance at Albert Park this weekend. But the other theme, Martin, has been the overtaking. And everyone says you can't overtake at Albert Park, but today we've seen some wonderful overtaking manoeuvres.
Yeah, I think you've got cars that are in the zone with tyre temperature and others that are not. I mean, for example, that last lap, Button was 7 seconds slower than Alonso in a bit of traffic, and with a car that wasn't fully up to speed in terms of tyre temperature, just a million miles off the pace. Now it's beginning to calm down again. But Alonso's lead straight back up to 6 seconds. Ralf Schumacher just a second behind Kimi Raikkonen now for 2nd and 3rd place.
Riding on board with Giancarlo Fisichella. This is 7th place man, hunting down 6th place Jenson Button. 0.3 of a second was the margin as they crossed the line at the end of the last lap. The car up in front of them, you can just see in the distance, is Nick Heidfeld. And then some way in front of him is Juan Pablo Montoya.
What you need to understand is that they choose the tyres for this event a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, then they have to go into production. So they choose the construction and the compound, second-guessing track conditions and weather conditions. And quite clearly, they've all been wrong-footed by the very cold afternoon.
There's Montero out of the Grand Prix. Tremendous finishing record last year, of course. Amazing reliability. And this year, he's got an early retirement. Just looking at that onboard shot of Fisichella's car, you could see that he was revving to just over 19,000 RPM, so quite close to the maximum at this stage of the Grand Prix for Fisichella. He's chasing points and he needs all the power he can have from the engine. One of the decisive factors this season in how competitive you're going to be is how much you can run your engine at high revs. Michael Schumacher crashed out of this Grand Prix early on. He's with Louise.
Michael, was that just down to the fact you were pushing so hard, or were there any problems with the car that contributed to it?
Yeah, no, I was behind Jensen, who was in whatever trouble, and I was running pretty close to get a good slipstream out of the last corner, and got too much understeer and run wide.
Earlier in the race, we saw you being overtaken by the Toro Rosso. Do you think that V10 is giving them an unfair advantage?
No, not at all. I mean, that was purely down to our poor performance at this stage of the race.
Thanks, Michael.
More or less matched on lap time, but crucially, Alonso got that margin off the restart because there were two Midland cars between Raikkonen and Alonso, and Raikkonen couldn't pass them until they crossed the start-finish line. Alonso very clever off that restart then, dropping the hammer nice and early, knowing that the Midlands would be very slow to pick up, and that the earlier he dropped the hammer, really, Martin, the bigger a gap he was going to have, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had all the ace cards up his sleeve there with traffic to help him out and a clear track in front of him. He could dominate the pace too. As soon as the pace car comes in, the first man, the leader of the race, becomes the pace car effectively and then controls the rest of the pack. And, well, you just got to watch the tail of the Renault squat down as soon as he applies the power, because he's off and he left a lot of them for dead. 6.2 seconds advantage. You're right, Raikkonen is now at least pegging him. Ralf Schumacher's not too far behind either. Montoya too, all in the 27s now, so suddenly they're all beginning to normalise a little bit. Now they can actually get some racing laps under their belt.
Yep, they have actually managed to save the engines quite a bit with all these laps behind the safety car. It's been a very staccato stop-start race. Looking here at the apex speeds at turn 5, fastest man today, Rubens Barrichello through there. And look at the difference between him, for example, and Scott's speed, 6 kilometres an hour difference. But it's not really done Rubens much good. He's complaining of a soft brake pedal. He's hating it out there. Teammate Jenson Button's been quick through there as well. And it's interesting that Alonso hasn't needed to be the quickest man, but he's just been playing the percentages everywhere. He's been the fastest man generally on the racetrack. And what's also interesting to me is that this season, what we're seeing as a pattern emerging is that although Alonso's winning the Grand Prix and always being at the front at the end of the race, he's dominating the races, but he's not dominating the weekend as a whole, is he? And that's one of the differences about 2006.
I don't think he needs to dominate the whole weekend. He knows he's got a very solid package underneath him, doesn't he? And he's got all of the tools available to him. Raikkonen's having a charge, though. He actually closed the gap last time around. Just 12 laps to go, including this one. But I don't think Raikkonen's got enough in his pocket to come back and close that 6-second gap. But at least he's not going to let Alonso go away too quickly.
Well, he's had a couple of setbacks, Kimi Raikkonen. Several, in fact. The first one was obviously losing the part of his front wing end plate, which will have made him very, very slow. And if we could see, he was losing time to Alonso in the middle part of the Grand Prix, losing a lot of time. So Alonso had it really all under control, but these safety cars have offered Raikkonen the chance to close back up again. Also, Raikkonen slow in the pit stop, replacing the nose, and then held up twice behind Midlands at restart. So the pendulum has swung to him and away from him. And it's really been all about keeping your head this afternoon, because fortune has gone in both directions for both of these front runners, Alonso and Raikkonen. Alonso's seen several big leads chipped right down to nothing by safety cars, and yet he's kept his head and kept his foot down and charging on. So really a little day in which they've all grown up, and Montoya's got a huge tank slapper on there, but he manages to keep it going in a straight line.
He's pulled over. I wonder if something switched itself off somehow in there. I wonder if he did something crazy, like caught the power button or something, the ignition button or something, because suddenly he's gone with, he's lost the motor. But incredible, he got a little bit wide like Michael, not quite as wide as Michael Schumacher, hit the same bump. And suddenly everything seems to have switched off. He was just lining himself up for a go at Ralf Schumacher. And, well, what was that all about? Because I can't believe they're actually related incidents.
Well, the light came on, the flashing light at the back, which is the light that comes on when they go into the pit lane. So perhaps in his fast hands on the wheel, he may have caught the pit lane speed limiter button or something, I don't know. But certainly it seemed odd that the light came on at that point. Up onto the pit wall he goes.
Possibly electric, says Phil Prue.
He's obviously had quite a shock go through the system of the car and either internally broken something.
Well, I can't really quite hear what he's saying. He looks wired, doesn't he? What an afternoon he's had. Right off the start, battling with his teammate. He's put some good moves on people today.
Amazingly, it puts Barrichello up into the top 8, so 2 Hondas. We did have 2 McLarens, let's watch it. He just wasn't quite as wide as Michael, he had the car straighter. And look, in there was a puff of blue smoke as well, for good measure, at one point, and then the light flashes on. But they use that light for a number of functions, I think, to give them information. And here he goes. There's definitely a puff of smoke, but was that the under tray scraping along the ground? And boom, it's just like the ignition switch has been switched off, isn't it? Or maybe the energy going through the tub, through the chassis of the car, has damaged the electronics.
So, Juan Montoya walks away from a Grand Prix in which he has figured very largely here this afternoon. Apologises to his mechanics. Just shut itself off. Sorry, guys. Good job. We did our best, but it wasn't quite good enough. So, with 9 laps to go here in Albert Park, Fernando Alonso is leading the Grand Prix by 7.2 seconds. Now, that last lap he took 3/10 out of Kimi Raikkonen, so Raikkonen's charge halted the speeding in the pit lane. The safety car has certainly been his best friend here this afternoon. He is third. There is Montoya's car being pushed back into the pit lane. Nick Heidfeld, another contender for driver of the day, is up into 4th place, looking for Sauber BMW's 2nd points finish in a row. Jenson Button, the pole sitter, down to 5th, 2 seconds behind Heidfeld, but not quite on the pace yet to really to challenge him here this afternoon. Honda's pace not there again in the race. Fisichella 6th, Villeneuve 7th, so 2 points scoring positions for BMW Sauber. And Rubens Barrichello, having a miserable weekend, finds himself in 8th place.
Got on the curb, and as soon as I tried to bring the car back, it bounced and it shut off completely.
Not your only spin of the day either.
Oh, I know. It was one of those days that, you know, it was really no grip at all. And when I was getting to the grip, I was quite worse. So I was just trying to spin the tires as much as I could. And once I opened the throttle, I was pointed in the wrong direction, you know. And even behind the safety car, I was just front tire trying to move forward as much as we can, either with Kimi or anybody else, you know. Past Jenson, and we banged a little bit of wheels. He hit me going into turn 3, right in the last restart. I was trying to get into Ralph. I was quite close to him, and I thought I could have had him, so a bit of a shame.
Thank you.
Montoya's crazy ride ends here in the paddock, talking to Louise Goodman. And boy, I tell you what, his battle with Raikkonen on the opening lap, Martin, is one of the absolute highlights for me of this season so far. There's nothing, no quarter given there at all, was there?
And no quarter asked between those two, that's for sure. Remember, Alonso has one of their drives next year anyway. But he just put in a 1 minute 26.1. He's lowered his fastest lap of the race by 0.8 of a second. He's playing around out there. He's absolutely got this totally under control. And really, other than struggling to get past Jenson on the first lap, he's pretty much has had all afternoon, hasn't he?
It's interesting because the previous lap, Raikkonen had taken half a second out of him, so that lead is sort of swaying to and fro between them. But yes, that was an amazing lap from Alonso. It's taken the gap back out now to almost 10 seconds. That's a nice, comfortable margin for Fernando Alonso, looking for his 2nd Grand Prix victory of the season, his 3rd podium. Here's Ralf Schumacher.
Heidfeld is catching you up 1 second per lap.
Heidfeld is catching you at 1 second per lap, said his race engineer. That's probably a few minutes ago, a couple of minutes ago, that message, because Ralf has certainly responded. That last time it was just 0.6 of a second that Heidfeld took out of Ralf Schumacher. That lead between the two is just over 9 seconds with 7 laps to go. Ralf Schumacher should be safe here for his first podium of the season, provided he can keep the pace up. Back to the Red Bull then, of David Coulthard and of Dietrich Mateschitz's 2 Formula 1 teams. This is the A team, effectively, and Toro Rosso, the car of Scott Speed in front of him, is the B team. Now, Speed, interestingly, is only 4 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello, but he's not quite got the speed at this stage of the Grand Prix, if you'll pardon the pun, to catch him for a point. Nevertheless, Louise asked Gerhard Berger on the grid whether he thought Toro Rosso could score a point today, and he said he thought that was probably a bit much, but Speed isn't going to finish too far away from the points here this afternoon. And any more problems for any of the front runners, and he'll have a point.
Yep, the other two, the Toro Rosso of Liuzzi smeared down the wall, and Klein, of course, ramming the sister Red Bull into the wall, losing it under braking or possibly suspension failure after a knock. And Pat Simmons not looking unduly happy there. But there's news from Ted at Renault.
Yeah, and I bet I know why that is. I've just gone into Renault and I've asked them what's been going on. They say now that Flavio Briatore, the boss, has been on the radio to Giancarlo Fisichella, telling him to get a move on, telling him to try and overtake Jenson Button. They can't do any more about his understeer. They put as much front wing on as humanly possible, Martin.
Yeah, because they've just seen Alonso do a 26.1, 1 minute 26.1 in the sister car, and still Giancarlo's in the 28s out there. Just in a different league, aren't they? When Giancarlo's on it, like he was in Malaysia, he is brilliant, no doubt about it. When he's not, he just seems to lose it completely.
It sort of ebbs away from him, doesn't it, really? And he was on it throughout free practice on Friday, throughout qualifying yesterday. He was really putting a serious challenge together to his teammate Fernando Alonso, but it's just gone away during the Grand Prix here today. He did, of course, get involved in some bumping and grinding earlier on.
David, you just have to pass him. You have to pass him.
You have to pass him.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
For a point-scoring position, because if there's any other problems in these final few laps, then they're fighting for 9th place. They might pop in to a point-scoring, pick up 1 point or two, but I'm wondering why it's so urgent that he has to pass him.
Well, Barrichello seems to have slowed down a bit. He did a 1:29.1 on that last lap, so they're taking 3 or 4 tenths out of him. Maybe Barrichello's starting to come within range. I think, as you say, it's more for pride than points. But Scott Speed's done a good job here this afternoon. Earlier on, it was teammate Liuzzi who was in front of Michael Schumacher for the Toro Rosso team. Scott Speed was behind him. And I have to say, hats off to the 23-year-old Californian. He's doing a good job here at Albert Park, putting himself on the Formula One map for all the right reasons.
He's a difficult young man to get to like, I'm finding when I'm talking to him, but he's doing a solid job this afternoon. Alonso 9.5 seconds in front now. Raikkonen's just done the fastest middle sector of anybody.
Friday evening, and he moved to Europe 2.5 years ago. He's very committed to this style of racing. He never had any interest in oval racing or NASCAR or IndyCar, any of those kind of things. Even from being a small kid, he used to sit and watch the Grand Prix on American television, and this is where he always wanted to be. Came over to race in GP2 last year. He was racing Heikki Kovalainen, now the Renault test driver, and of course Nico Rosberg, who was champion in GP2 last year, now racing for Williams in Formula One. And well, he feels he belongs here on this Formula One grid. And it's Fisichella and Jenson Button now.
Yeah, Fisichella's just done a 1:27.5. Just found a bundle of time. Will he get his Botticelli kick when he gets out of that thing? He's just been coasting. All of a sudden, he's found a bundle of time.
Well, he's had Alan Permain, his race engineer, on the radio to him very publicly in front of all you at home and around the world, saying, you're not fast enough, mate. You're on the same setting. And he also had Flavio Briatore giving him the hurry up. Now he's getting on with it. And Jenson Button is in danger of losing another place here. 5th at the moment, just isn't quick enough at the moment. Raikkonen sets his fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far, a 1:26.4, as Fisichella gets in the slipstream behind Jenson Button, and he doesn't want anybody else passing him into turn 1 this afternoon. He's already seen Alonso and Raikkonen sail past him into there at various stages of this afternoon. This is the principal battle then in the closing stages of the Grand Prix.
Jenson choosing to take the middle line into the corner, sort of half. Well, you're not getting through there, mate. There's no way through there. They just compromise you on the exit. This is not really an overtaking zone unless you're absolutely side by side. You just got to stay close for the back straight. You really got to be good in the last corner here if you want your best chance to overtake. Raikkonen still pumping in the fastest lap. Gap down to 7 seconds now. And look, this is the style in which Fisichella suddenly started to catch Jenson Button. Very reminiscent, isn't it, of Jarno Trulli, how he used to have these off days. And I think it's a mindset, to be honest. It's if you're not pushing all day, every day, like Raikkonen, Alonso, Michael Schumacher, You just can't afford to have sleepy days. But, he's got to find a way past Jensen yet. Jensen's not going to give that one up too easily, but he seems as if when he gets in the slipstream, he's not really picking up quite enough to give himself a slingshot up the inside.
Well, Jensen's doing a super job here of resisting Giancarlo Fisichella. Let's hear the team radio of Alonso.
I am breathing, relax. Okay, mate, I'm fairly chilled out myself.
Rod Nelson there reacting to Alonso. I'm very relaxed, he said, and Rod Nelson saying, I'm fairly chilled myself. They are coming super job this afternoon. He's had 4 safety cars to contend with. He used the first one to jump Jenson Button at the restart, but since then he's seen big leads cut down by the safety car coming out, but he kept his head. And now in the closing stages, Raikkonen's closing up to 4.3 seconds behind him, but it's a little bit too much too late. We're looking at Fisichella then. They're coming through to complete the penultimate lap. Just 1 lap to go then for Jensen to resist Fisichella. We'll be picking up Alonso fairly soon on his final few corners.
Well, the sister Honda of Ide hurt him badly in one of the qualifying sessions, hurt Barrichello badly. Let's hope it's not going to Sato and he lets him through comfortably. And that's it, quite important there for Jensen, because Fisichella didn't really get any advantage. Fisichella a bit hot into turn 3, just loses a few meters.
Well, there's going to be plenty of action to look out for here, but meanwhile, the race leader, Fernando Alonso, is going to come through and collect his victory in a moment, and hopefully we'll cut through to him. Understandably, the director watching this battle as well. This is his first Australian Grand Prix victory, his second out of 3 races this year. Raikkonen finishes in 2nd place behind him. And what a great win for Fernando Alonso. A Renault hat-trick then so far this season. Raikkonen sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix on the final lap, 1:26.0. And let's see now in the closing stages whether Fisichella in 6th place can get 5th off Jenson Button. Hats off to Ralf Schumacher. Absolutely fabulous performance by him today. Oh, is that Button blowing up? Has he blown up? Oh, it's flames coming out the back and across the start-finish line. Who's going to cross the line in front? Flames, Jenson keeps his foot down. Fisichella gets the place. Oh no, I don't believe it.
Make it.
He's not going to make it. Get out and push, Jenson. Get out and push.
And they're all right down to Coulthard. They're not a lap behind. Jensen's going to finish 10th. He's not going to get across the line. They're all going to take the pace from him. Yeah, he's down to 10th. Doesn't score any points. And Scott Speed did that final one. No wonder. Yeah, Toro Rosso getting their first points then. And Jenson Button, what a dismal afternoon. Incredible.
Lovely win, mate. Grazie, Ferdi, grazie, fantastico.
Well, that was a tremendously dramatic finish to the Grand Prix. And you know what? I think Jenson Button's name just was not on this race today. He has had all the bad luck you could possibly have. And then what? 20 yards from the line? No, it's a bit more than that, looking out my Combox window. I'd say it's about 75, 80 yards from the finish line. The car lets go, blows up. And that's it. No points for Jenson, the pole sitter here. He goes home empty-handed.
I bet he doesn't know that he's got no points yet either, because he was so far up the front. But unusually, and it's mostly because of the safety car, the numerous safety car situations, unusually so many people on the lead lap, and he's just fallen right to the back of them because he didn't cross the line. And look at that, Fisichella nearly dropping it on the oil, just kept it together. And it looks like Jenson's going to make it to the line, and Ted is with Nick Fry of Honda.
Okay, Nick, the engine went. Presumably you didn't want to cross the line so that you can change the engine.
Yeah, that's...
But you gave away a load of points.
We did. We need to look at the pros and cons. It was a quick call by the race engineer, and we need to see if it was right later.
Well, I suppose that means he goes to Imola not having to drop 10 places, but the end to a thoroughly disappointing day, I guess.
Yeah, it was. We had great trouble getting heat into our tyres, especially the front tyres. Trouble Jenson had was every time he came out when there was a safety car, very cold front tyres, couldn't get into the last corner properly, and then was overtaken on the straight. And unfortunately, it happened every single time, so we really need a good look at just why we had that problem.
just seen Jensen go off absolutely furious.
Yeah, he's less than impressed, but rightly so, I think. We've got a lot of work to do before we get to Imola.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Well, what an eventful race. Another from his collection of strange gestures on victory. He emulates the Grinch and Jim Carrey apparently in one of the previous Grand Prix, and I'm sure he'll explain what that one was all about. It looks something to do with donkeys, but anyway, he knows what it means. A handshake with Kimi Raikkonen, who we'll need to know from him, I think, why the pace was so erratic of McLaren here this afternoon. And Ralf Schumacher, who really did a great job this afternoon. There you can see Scott Speed nicking that final point ahead of David Coulthard. How angry is Coulthard going to be about that? Welcome back to Albert Park, where we have enjoyed one of the most eventful Grand Prix for many, many years. Certainly the best Grand Prix since last year's Japan race in Suzuka, which is one of the all-time classics, and Formula One really is delivering up some tremendous entertainment at the moment. Bahrain was a good race, Malaysia was okay, but this has been a stonker. There's your race winner, Fernando Alonso. 2 wins then out of 3 for him, 3 out of 3 clean sweep for Renault in the opening part of this Grand Prix. There's Kimi Raikkonen, who finished second but didn't have the pace that we believe McLaren would have here this afternoon in the Grand Prix, and Ralf Schumacher, who I have to put to you as my candidate for driver of the day, along with Nick Heidfeld, for a stunning drive, recovering from a drive-through penalty as well. He made one more visit to the pits than anybody else. And who do you give the driver of the day to anyway?
In many respects, it's a difficult race to judge, because the gaps are heavily affected by, what was it, 4 safety car periods that we had. But I agree with you. I think Ralf Schumacher has made the best of his equipment today. I mean, it was a brilliant drive from Alonso. And particularly those restarts, the confidence the boy has now at the wheel of a Formula 1 car is just a pleasure to see. But I think Ralf really has outperformed his car today.
He certainly has. He seems to have a contact lens problem there. Just going to there's Rod Nelson, his race engineer, Alonso's race engineer. Also Heidfeld deserves honourable mention. So does Villeneuve, bringing BMW Sauber 2 points finishes here this afternoon. And Rubens Barrichello, 7th, Scott Speed picking up a point as well in 8th, but a delighted winner. Alonso's 26th visit to a Formula One podium, his 10th career victory in 71 starts. What a record the guy has. And this Renault team as well, very, very strong at the moment.
Yes, they've won the first 3 races, just as they did last season.
Rod Nelson there, who said he was feeling pretty chilled out himself in the closing stages of the race.
Interesting that they've stopped Button so he doesn't get a 10th-place drop on the grid, isn't it, at the next race, and gave up some guaranteed points. That was my understanding of what Nick Prix was saying to us. They gave up 3 World Championship points so as not to have a drop. I think they might live to regret that.
I don't understand that at all. A very strange decision. Ralf Schumacher, driver of the day, according to me and Martin Brundle. A fabulous performance from him. And so now the champagne here at Albert Park once again for Fernando Alonso. Formula One will now go off on an Easter break. We'll rejoin you at San Marino for that Grand Prix in Imola in 3 weeks' time. Renault's Fernando Alonso is in dominant form at the moment. His message to the rest: catch me if you can.